Hey everybody, so I thought I'd put together a video showing a little bit of what it takes to install the Cobb lower control arm rear, bushing for the rear part of the front lower control arm. So it's kind of what it looks like when it's not the cambered one. I'll put the part number in the description. Those are some of the spacers for it, and I'll show you some of the parts that you got to remove and how you press it out. This is what the control arm looks like to have all the parts in, just so you can see it. And then I'll show you what it looks like when everything is removed. But that's the end link right there. That is going to be the front of the control arm that you're gonna have to remove. And then that's going to be the rear of the control arm where the actual bushing is that has to be removed. And then you're gonna have that black bracket that's kind of holding from the front of the control arm to the rear of the control arm. And I'll tell you what tools you need in the next part. So I already started removing some of the parts. So you're gonna need like an 18 and 19 to be able to get the end link off the sway bar. There's gonna be a bracket that's gonna hold the front, kind of like the front to the rear. You could see it on that side right there, on the passenger side. So you're gonna remove this bracket. Those are gonna be 17. And then there's going to be the bracket that's actually holding the control arm that you see over there. And that's gonna be two 19s that are gonna hold around the edges of the bracket, and then the 19 that's gonna actually be holding in the lower control arm to the body of the car. That's kind of gonna be that longer bolt. Then you're gonna also be removing a 17 that's gonna be there, and that's gonna be the front side of the control arm. And you're gonna need a wrench, and you're gonna need a ratchet for that to be able to get that part out. You're also gonna need a 19 to be able to remove the ball joint from it, and then you'll have the control arm out. So I picked up this Harbor Freight kind of 12-ton press just because it seemed like it was gonna be the easiest way to try to get this out. And for what they were charging me to actually press it out and put in a new one, I thought I'd just buy a press myself. So this is kind of like the one step under of the largest from a ball joint removal toolkit, like the cup that comes with it. And I've already have it pressed in kind of like as best as possible. And you want to be real careful that you don't bend the arm. Like take your time going around it, making sure that you're holding just the edge of it, like just slowly hold it into place so you don't end up in a spot where you bend this arm. I've seen a lot of people with a lot of other cars kind of rush it and brace it all crazy, and then it breaks. I went ahead and I put a little bit of PB Blast on it, kind of like when I started, just to kind of like let it try to soak in a little bit. And I'm just going, little by little, put a little PB, push it, wait a second, put a little PB, push it. And, just take your time. Like the worst thing you could do is break this arm, then you got a big problem. So just take your time, and, I'll kind of show you when the bushing is pushed out. Another thing I want to make sure you realize is that you have the control arm the correct way. So you want to make sure that the concave side is down as you're doing it. When you look at that ball joint side, that you're going down. So the bushing is pushing from the top down out of it. Slowly coming out. Just take your time. And make sure that cup is as centered as possible as you're doing it, You don't want it to go pushing in all crazy. So we're already pushing it almost through. So this is what you got once the whole thing comes out. You should have your thing pretty good, not scored. If you had the bracing under it correct to like prevent the arm from getting any damage. And then there you're gonna have your old ball joint that's out. This was a white line flat out, I think it was called, that I got when the car Got it in when I purchased the car. It was already in there. And I was getting a large clunk, kind of like chased around everything, switching everything, trying to find it. And ultimately, I didn't realize that this ball joint, this bushing, excuse me, that it kind of has this space in between it that goes bad. I thought it was a full urethane until I looked it up. And yeah, it looks like this goes bad and you get a bad clunk when you go over little bumps, which is driving me crazy. So on for the next one now. So the next thing I wanted to point out was, depending on which ball joint you're installing, there's an up and there's a downside to this, right? So if you Google online the Cobb, ball joint control arm installation, they'll tell you that the side that says Cobb is the side that's down. So remember, the logo side, Cobb, goes down. And then the side that has kind of like the ring pin, not a ring pin, like this clip, this tension clip that's holding it in, that's gonna be your upside. So you make sure that that's up. See the little holes there for that retaining clip, that's your up. And then your Cobb, that's your down. So once you have the bushing kind of lined up, make sure you're using the correct cup size too. It should be, Cobb says it should be exactly the same size so that you avoid kind of like putting it in the incorrect way. So kind of like line it up as best as possible so that you have a nice even press in when you're doing it. Oh, there you go. There it is, pulled out. Since I have the one that's not the caster adjustable one, I kind of just lined up where the numbers and the Cobb are just kind of like vertically going there so that both sides kind of look even. And that's it. I'm gonna kind of clean this up a little bit just to make it a little better before putting it in and go back to install. So what I found easiest to do is when you're gonna start to put the arm back in, go ahead and put the front of the control arm in, especially if you have, a urethane bushing that's gonna be a little bit thicker. Try to stick that side in first, work your way in with that, and then kind of everything starts to line up right where, you want everything to be so you can just keep on with the install. So I'm gonna do that first one back there, put the bolts in there, not tightening it, but just putting it in to secure it, and then work the ball joint in next. Make sure also that you have that cone on there because sometimes it'll pop off, and you want to make sure that when you put this back in, that right into the ball joint kind of spot that of the control arm, that cone is on there. And I'm gonna go put that on there. Make sure you have the washer that goes on there. Put the castle nut on there. And I'm just not tightening everything up, just putting it on just snug so everything kind of like is able to line up to get all the parts in. And then I'll actually get the torque specs, which Cobb gives you on their instructions, to finish the whole thing up. So for this part back here, what helped me out to do it a little bit easier was if you just go ahead and thread in the 2 bolts that hold that support by that part, kind of helps you line it up a little bit better for you to put the larger bolt that's gonna go in. Because for this part right here, this moves around, but it's really stiff since it's a harder bushing. So you can go ahead and grab the bolt, run it through this part here, hold this in so you can start kind of guide it through so you can make it so you can thread it in. Because based on how I'm doing it, I'm having the normal setting, which is going to take a little washer or a little spacer that comes from Cobb that goes on the top. So, just put these 2 in. It helps guide you in, just makes it a little bit easier for yourself, especially if you're doing it by yourself. So if you're doing the anti-dive, if you're not doing the anti-dive or, anti-lift setting from Cobb and you're doing just the regular handling one, then this is how you'll put it. You'll have that 16 millimeter spacer with an 11 millimeter spacer on the top of it, kind of guide it through, work it in, and then, you can just push it through at that point and just button everything up. So when you're buttoning up this last part, this last bracket right here, if for whatever reason it ends up we're backwards or you don't know which way it goes forward, there's a little tab right there. Go ahead and make sure that tab is facing to the front. And then, you know, you just put that last bolt in there and that's it. And that's the way it should pretty much look for you when you have it all done. It should be that if you're doing, you know, the two spacers like that, the 16 and the 11 stacked on top of each other for like what Cobb calls normal handling. And that's everything buttoned up.